He should have died that night. Instead, he woke up and thought he was still married to me. The problem? We've never met before. The hospital always smelled like coffee and adrenaline by midnight, like something in between exhaustion and purpose. You could taste it in the air. The kind of night where the hallways hum low and the lights buzz too bright. I'd been on shift 14 hours already, my hair sticking to my neck, my hands smelling like antiseptic and latex, when the ambulance radio cracked through the stillness. Incoming in male 30s. Multiple fractures, possible internal bleeding. ETA 4 minutes. I didn't even think, I just moved. We always did muscle memory more than emotion gloves. Gown mask, heart steady, not too fast, not too slow. The doors burst open in a blur of red and noise. The paramedics wheeled him in, soaked in blood and asphalt, his chest rising uneven under the oxygen mask. Car accident. One of them shouted, hit and run near Uptown, major head trauma, vitals. Unstable. We worked fast compressions, IV fluids, oxygen, everything a rhythm I could follow with my eyes closed, and then as I leaned closer to check his pulse, I caught a glimpse of his face beneath the bruises and swelling, and my stomach dropped so hard it felt like falling through the floor. No, 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 it couldn't be him, but it was the jawline, the scar on his chin, the faint dimple that still somehow showed through the bruises. His name wasn't coming back to me yet, but his face did. The way memories come when you're not ready for them, like ghosts opening old doors, and then it hit me like a flash of lightning cutting through fog. His name was Daniel Reed, and 2 years ago he'd walked down the aisle with my ex-boyfriend Evan. My throat tightened. My hands froze for half a second before instinct dragged me back. I told myself it didn't matter. Not here, not now, patient first, always, always. The doctor barked orders. BP dropping, we're losing him. I pressed harder, focused on the rhythm, on the numbers. Not the face, not the past, but every beat felt heavier, like my own heart was trying to sync with his. And then just like that, the monitor steadied a breath and a miracle out. We'd pulled him back from the edge when the team finally cleared out. I stood there for a moment staring at him under the soft hum of monitors, the world outside still wet from the rain that had carried him here. His file lay open on the counter. Daniel Reed, 35, married, next of kin. Evan Collins. Evan, seeing his name in black ink, made something inside me twist sharp and cold, because I hadn't heard it in so long, hadn't let myself think about any of it. But the universe had its own cruel sense of humor, and tonight, apparently, I was the punchline. If you were Lena, would you have told the team right away that you knew him, or kept it to yourself? Morning came slow and pale through the blinds, painting everything in that washed-out hospital gray that makes time feel endless. The overnight team had switched out. Half the beds were quiet. The coffee had gone cold on my desk when I heard it. The softest sound, a groan from the trauma bay. The kind of sound that means the body's fighting its way back to the surface. I turned, and there he was, eyes fluttering open one by one, confusion flooding his face like a tide. His fingers twitching against the blanket, his lips dry, the oxygen tube slipping as he tried to speak. Hey, don't move yet, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. You're in St. Mary's Hospital. You were in an accident, but you're safe now. Okay, just breathe for me. His gaze met mine, unfocused at first, then sharper, slowly tracking across my face like he was piecing together a dream, and then it happened. The air changed. His eyes widened, his mouth parted just slightly, and then he whispered hoarse. Barely there, but clear enough that I felt it like a punch straight to the chest. Lena? I froze, mid-motion, fingers still on the IV line. You remember me? I asked quietly, though I didn't know why I even said it. He smiled weakly like he was trying to move mountains with that one expression, and said words I wasn't ready for, not in a million years. Of course I remember you, he murmured. You're my wife. The room tilted, the hum of the machine suddenly too loud, too close. My breath caught somewhere in my throat. I couldn't move. I just stared at him, and he kept talking like he believed it, like it was the truest thing in the world. I thought you'd left. I tried calling. Where are we? What happened? Every instinct told me to correct him, to say no. No, Daniel, I'm not your wife. I'm your ex's ex. We met twice at a barbecue and once at your wedding, but I couldn't get the words out because he looked at me with such raw, fragile certainty, and for the smallest, strangest second, I almost forgot what was real, too. He reached out slightly, the movement weak and trembling. Lena? He said again, softer this time, like he was afraid I'd disappear if he blinked. Don't leave again. Okay, please don't leave. My heart cracked right down the middle, so I did what nurses do when there's no manual for this kind of chaos. I smiled. I told him to rest, that he was safe, that everything would make sense soon. And as he drifted back into the haze of painkillers, I stepped back into the hallway, my palms pressed to my eyes, trying to hold myself together because I knew what would come next. The paperwork, the phone call, the moment Evan walked through those doors, and I wasn't ready for any of it. If you were in Lena's place, would you correct him right then, or let him believe the lie until he was stronger? It was almost noon when I finally gathered the courage to make the call, my fingers hovering over the phone screen longer than I should have. I'd dialed 1,000 emergencies before, but this one felt different. This one wasn't about saving a life. It was about reopening a wound. Hi, this is Lena Carter. From St. Mary's Medical Center. I began, my voice thin but professional. I'm calling about Daniel Reed. He was in an accident early this morning. You're listed as his emergency contact. There was silence, then a small inhale, and a voice I hadn't heard in 2 years came through, soft, careful, like he was trying not to break it. Lena? Just hearing my name from him again made the air shift. I cleared my throat. Yes, it's me. I'm on shift in trauma. He's stable, but you should come in. He didn't say much after that. Just an okay, and I'll be there soon. But his voice lingered in the air long after the call ended, like a song you didn't want to remember but couldn't stop humming by the time he arrived. I'd convinced myself I could handle it. I'd replayed what I'd say, how I'd stand, what mask I'd wear. Professionalism first, emotion later. But when I saw him walking down the hall, everything I'd rehearsed fell apart. Evan looked the same and completely different, his hair a little longer, his jaw sharper, his eyes still that same deep, steady brown that used to calm me when everything else was chaos. He wore a navy sweater, damp from the drizzle outside his hand, gripping a paper cup like he needed it to stay grounded when our eyes met. He stopped mid-step, the kind of stop where time just gives up for a moment and breathes with you. Lena, he said quietly, almost like a question. You're here? Yeah, I managed. I was on duty when they brought him in. He exhaled hard, looked down, then back up. How bad is it? He's lucky, I said. A few broken ribs, some internal bruising, possible concussion, but he'll make it. He nodded slowly, his relief visible like his shoulders had been holding up the sky. Can I see him? Yeah, but I hesitated. Evan, there's something you should know first. He frowned. What is it? I swallowed. When he woke up, he thought I was you, he blinked, then frowned deeper. Yeah, I said softly. He called me his wife. Evan stared for a moment, processing the words, then let out a quiet half laugh that wasn't really a laugh. Of course he did. He hit his head hard, but something in his voice cracked just slightly, something that didn't sound like humor. And as he walked past me into Daniel's room, I couldn't help but wonder what he'd do when Daniel looked up and called me by his husband's name again, because something told me this wasn't just confusion. It was the start of something none of us were ready to face. If you were Evan, how would you feel walking into that hospital room? Relief, jealousy, guilt, or confusion? The room was quiet except for the steady hum of the heart monitor and the whisper of rain against the window. It had that heavy kind of silence that only hospitals know, the kind that feels alive with all the things left unsaid. Evan stood at the foot of the bed, hands in his pockets like he didn't know where to put them, his eyes locked on Daniel's face the whole time. I hovered near the machines pretending to check vitals, but really I was just trying not to breathe too loud. I'd done this 100 times, been in hundreds of recovery rooms, but this one felt different too, personal, too raw. Daniel stirred the way people do. When they're fighting their way out of anesthesia, his fingers twitched first, then his head turned just a little. His eyelids fluttered and then opened hazy and slow. For a second, his eyes landed on me again. Confusion melting into something softer, that same strange recognition from before, and he smiled weakly. You stayed, he whispered before I could answer. Evan stepped forward, voice low and careful. Hey, it's me, Danny. You're okay. You're safe. Daniel's eyes flicked toward the sound, then back at me, and the confusion deepened, a crease forming between his brows. Who are you? He asked faintly. The words hit the air sharp enough to cut through all of us. Evan blinked. What do you mean it's me? Evan, your husband. Daniel's mouth parted, but no words came. He just kept looking at me like he was trying to fit puzzle pieces that didn't match. No, he said slowly. No, that's not right. She's my wife. His hand lifted weakly toward me, fingers trembling, the monitor beeped faster. Daniel, stop, I said gently, stepping closer. You've had a head injury, okay? Your memory's a little mixed up, but you're safe. That's what matters. But he shook his head, barely moving, but certain. No, I remember you. Your voice, your hands. You were there that night by the lake. You said you'd never leave. Evan's eyes snapped to me, confusion and something sharper flashing underneath it. Jealousy, fear, disbelief, maybe all of it at once. What the hell is he talking about? He asked quietly. Too quietly. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out because I didn't know what to say. I didn't know why Daniel was remembering my past instead of his own. He's disoriented, I managed finally. It's not uncommon after trauma. The brain tries to fill gaps with old memories. But even as I said it, I could feel the lie sitting heavy between us because Daniel wasn't just speaking nonsense. He was remembering something real, something that belonged to someone else, maybe something that wasn't supposed to be remembered at all. Evan looked at me for a long time, his jaw tight, then stepped back, eyes unreadable. Right, he said quietly, old memories. But I could feel it. The shift in the air, the way everything had tilted slightly off balance like the ground itself had started to move beneath us, and somehow I knew this was only the beginning. What would you do if someone you barely knew suddenly remembered moments from your life? Moments they couldn't possibly have been part of. By the time the neurologist came to check on him, the rain had stopped outside, leaving everything gray and heavy, the windows fogged, the kind of quiet that presses against your chest. The doctor ran through the usual questions. Name, date, location? But Daniel kept circling back to me, his gaze soft and certain, like I was the only anchor he could find in the fog. Can you tell me what you remember before the accident? The doctor asked, pen ready, clipboard, balanced against his arm. Daniel hesitated. I was driving home from work. I think there was rain headlights and then, I don't know, I just woke up here. The doctor nodded. That's okay. It'll come back with rest. But then Daniel's eyes found mine again, and he said she was waiting for me. The doctor blinked. Who? Daniel pointed at me weakly. Her, Lena. My breath caught, but I didn't move. I couldn't. Waiting for you where? The doctor asked gently, Daniel's eyes unfocused, like he was watching something only he could see, by the lake near her old house, the one with the broken swing. She used to sit there with her coffee and that blue mug she loved. The pen slipped from the doctor's hand and hit the floor. But I barely heard it because every single word Daniel said was true. The lake, the swing, the blue mug. All mine, all pieces of my life from years ago. Things I hadn't told anyone, not even Evan. Evan shifted beside the bed. His arms crossed, his jaw tight. What are you talking about? He asked Daniel, his voice low. That's not your memory. Daniel frowned. Of course it is. I met her there. We talked about everything she said. She was scared to move to Chicago because she didn't want to lose herself. She said, stop, I whispered, sharper than I meant to. Just stop. Daniel looked confused, hurt, like I'd taken something from him. He tried to sit up but winced from the pain. Lena, what's wrong? Why are you pretending you don't remember me? Evan turned toward me, then eyes dark. What is going on? I shook my head. I don't know. I swear I don't. But even as I said it, my skin prickled. Because what if somehow he did remember me, not from this life, not from this timeline, but something deeper, something impossible? The doctor cleared his throat, muttered something about cognitive confusion and left the room, but the silence he left behind felt too loud, too full of questions no one wanted to ask. Evan didn't say another word. He just kept looking at me like maybe if he stared long enough, he'd see the answer in my face, and Daniel lay there breathing slow, still staring at me like he was afraid I'd disappear again. And for the first time, I started to wonder if maybe this wasn't an accident at all. Maybe it was something trying to pull us all back together for a reason. None of us understood yet. If someone you just met started describing memories only you could know, would you believe in coincidence? Or something bigger? The shift had ended hours ago, but I couldn't leave. Not yet. Not with the weight of everything still hanging in the air like smoke. I was sitting in the break room staring at my untouched coffee when I heard the door open and close, softly behind me. I didn't have to look up to know it was him. Evan always had this way of moving quietly even when he was angry, especially when he was angry. You look exactly the same, he said finally, voice calm but sharp underneath, except maybe more tired. I smiled without looking up. That's what night shifts do to you. He didn't laugh. He just leaned against the counter. arms crossed, eyes on me. He's still asking for you. Keeps calling you his wife. I exhaled slow. He's confused, Evan, his brain. Don't do that, he interrupted gently but firm. Don't hide behind the medical talk. Right now, I need you to tell me what's going on because that guy in there just described your old house, your coffee mug, your lake, everything you used to love, everything I remember from when we were together, and I can't explain it. His words came out steady, but his hands gave him away. They were shaking just slightly, the same way they did that night he told me goodbye. I met his eyes finally and said, I don't know why he remembers those things. Evan, I really don't. Maybe he overheard something from you. Maybe he's just mixing pieces of stories. No, he said quietly, stepping closer. He knew things. I never told him. He said you were scared to move to Chicago. You only told me that once the night before. I proposed, remember? His voice cracked just enough to make me close my eyes for a second. Because of course I remembered that night, the rain, the candlelight, the ring, that never quite fit. Right, Evan? I said softly. I can't explain it. I don't have an answer. He studied me for a long time, then sighed. Do you ever think about us? The question hit like static electricity, small, but burning. Sometimes, I said honestly, but not the way you think. Not because I want it back, just because it mattered. He nodded once, the kind of nod that tries to look like acceptance but doesn't quite make it. He loves me, He said, Daniel, he's good. He's kind. He's the best thing that's happened to me, and right now he's looking at you like you're the one person in the world he can't lose, and I don't know how to feel about that. His honesty hurt more than his anger ever could. I looked at him and said quietly, maybe it's not about what we feel. Maybe it's about what he needs until he remembers who he is. But when I said it, my heart didn't believe it. Not entirely, because deep down, something about the way Daniel looked at me felt too real, too familiar, and that scared me more than anything. If you were Evan, would you feel threatened by Daniel's confusion or heartbroken seeing your past and present collide like that? It was near midnight again when I went back to check on him. The ward was quiet, the kind of quiet that only comes when most of the city is asleep. Lights dim, monitors steady, that soft hum that feels like breathing. Daniel was awake, his eyes clearer than before, a shadow of restlessness behind them, like his body was still remembering pain, his mind still chasing ghosts. Couldn't sleep? I asked gently, stepping closer. He smiled faintly. I keep dreaming of water. Water? He nodded. The lake again, the same one. I keep seeing you there always. Sometimes you're sitting on the dock, sometimes you're walking away, and I'm trying to call you, but I can't move. I forced a small smile. Dreams are tricky. The medication can do that too. No, he said quietly, shaking his head. This feels different. Real, like a memory someone left in my head. His voice had that soft, pleading tone people use when they want you to believe them more than they want to be right. I wanted to tell him to rest, to stop thinking, but then he shifted slightly and the blanket slipped from his arm. That's when I saw it. A thin black line peeking just above the tape from the IV, a mark almost hidden on the inside of his forearm. Daniel, what's that? I asked before I could stop myself. He looked down, confused. What? I pulled the blanket back gently, and there, it was a small faded tattoo like someone had drawn it years ago, then tried to erase it. A simple outline of a swing, a single rope broken on one side. Dangling down, my heart stopped, because I knew that swing. I'd drawn it once in the corner of my old journal years ago, back when Evan and I lived near the lake, back when I used to sit under that broken tree sketching little pieces of my life to keep from falling apart. Who did this? I whispered, my fingers trembling as I traced the air above the mark without touching it. He frowned. You did what? You drew it, he said, his voice certain. On my arm. One summer night after we fell asleep on the porch. You said it was to remind us where we started. I stepped back, shaking my head. No, Daniel, I wouldn't. But he was still looking at me like it was the simplest truth in the world, and in that moment, I couldn't tell what scared me more. The possibility that he was delusional, or the flicker of recognition deep inside me that whispered, maybe he wasn't. The monitor beeped softly, the rain started again outside, and I stood there frozen, caught between science and something I didn't believe in, because that broken swing had always been mine, and now somehow it was part of him too. What would you do if someone you barely knew had a mark, a symbol that only you should remember? Coincidence or connection? The night shift always made time stretch weird, like the clocks in hospitals worked differently. Ticking slower when you wanted them to move faster. Ticking faster when you wished you had more to hold on to. Daniel was asleep. Finally, the kind of deep, medicated sleep that makes the body limp, but I couldn't leave. Not yet. Something in me kept pulling me back like gravity. A quiet whisper that said, there's more here. So I stayed charting notes, pretending it was work, until I noticed his personal bag still sealed on the side table, standard procedure after trauma. The paramedics tag. Everything, clothes, wallet, phone, anything that comes in with the body. I hesitated, but then curiosity outweighed protocol. I told myself it was for medical inventory. I unzipped the bag. Slowly inside was the usual phone-cracked wallet smeared with blood keys, a folded flannel shirt, and beneath it a small notebook. The cover soft, worn edges frayed like something carried for years when I touched it. I felt a pulse somewhere deep in my chest, a strange ache like recognition. I flipped it open and froze. The handwriting was messy, looping, but familiar too. Familiar. The first page started with L, just that letter drawn slow and deliberate. Then below it, words I knew by heart before I even read them because they were mine. She sits by the lake every morning, watching the same reflection, waiting for the wind to change her mind. My words, my line from a poem I wrote years ago, one I never showed anyone, not even Evan. My throat closed. I flipped through more pages, sketches of the swing of a lake, of a girl drawn from behind with her hair tied up in the exact messy knot I used to wear during nursing school. How could this exist? How could he have it? The last page stopped me cold. It said, if she ever finds this, tell her I kept my promise. My hand shook, the notebook slipping from my fingers, hitting the tile with a soft thud. The sound echoing too loud in the empty room kept his promise. What promise? What could he possibly mean? I picked it up again, scanning for dates, for clues. Nothing. Just more lines, more sketches. Pieces of someone who knew me like I knew myself. And then, at the back, tucked between two pages, a photograph small and creased, a lake at sunset. Two figures blurred. One sitting, one standing, and the faint outline of a swing. No faces, no names. But I didn't need them because, somehow, I knew that photo wasn't just his memory or mine. It was both merged like two stories told in the same heartbeat. The door creaked open behind me, and I nearly dropped the notebook again. Evan's voice, low, quiet, tired. What are you doing? I turned the notebook over in my hands, hiding the cover, my pulse racing, nothing, just checking his belongings. He frowned, stepping closer. Lena, what is that? I swallowed. Something I don't understand. And for the first time since the accident, I meant it completely. If you found something from your own past, hidden among a stranger's things, would you believe it was fate or fear it was something darker? The room was dim again, the kind of half-light where everything looks softer than it really is. The rain had slowed to a whisper, and the monitor beside Daniel pulsed steady calm. I was still holding the notebook, my thumb tracing the edge of the worn cover when he stirred again, eyes fluttering open like he'd been listening to me breathe. You're still here, he murmured, voice rough with sleep. You always stayed longer than you should. I froze because those words didn't sound like something he would say to a nurse. They sounded like something from a memory, one that didn't belong to this version of us. You need rest, I said carefully. Your body's still recovering. But he shook his head slowly. No, I need you to listen before I forget. Again, something in his tone made me stop, my pulse picking up. What do you mean, forget again? He looked at the ceiling for a long moment, as if trying to piece together clouds. There's something wrong with time, he whispered. Or maybe it's memory. I don't know. I just know I've seen you before. Not just in dreams. Not just now, but somewhere else. I swallowed hard. Daniel, you hit your head. No, he cut in softly but firmly. I remember the swing of the lake, your laugh, the smell of rain that night. You told me you were scared to start over. I told you I'd find you again no matter what. My breath caught the room too small, too heavy for all the air in my chest. Daniel, that's impossible. We barely know each other. He smiled faintly, eyes unfocused like he was seeing something far away. Maybe not here, maybe not in this life, but somewhere. I think we did. I stared at him, not sure if I wanted to believe or run the notebook heavy in my hand, my name hiding between his pages like a secret written in both our handwriting. He lifted his hand weakly, reaching toward me, palm up. I don't know how or why, but I kept my promise. He said, I found you again. Tears burned behind my eyes, and I hated how easily those words slipped under my skin because some part of me deep down too quiet to ignore believed him. Even if logic screamed not to behind me, I heard movement. Evan's voice in the doorway, soft, almost breaking. What promise? Daniel turned his head slowly toward the sound, but his eyes stayed on me. She'll remember one day, he whispered, when she's ready. And then his gaze drifted again, his body relaxing into the kind of sleep that looked too deep to disturb. Evan stepped closer, his eyes on me, not angry, not jealous, just scared. What did he mean? I looked down at the notebook, the sketch of the swing open between us, and said quietly, I think he remembers something we forgot. The words hung there like fog, something neither of us knew how to breathe through. If someone told you they'd loved you in another life and you felt like it might be true, would you believe them? It was 2 days later when Daniel woke again, this time slower, softer, calmer, like his body had finally remembered how to stay in the world. I was sitting by the window charting his vitals, but mostly pretending to work because I couldn't look away from him. I'd been dreaming about that night by the lake he'd described, though I'd never been there before. And when I woke up, it felt like something in my chest had been rewired. When he opened his eyes, he didn't look confused this time. He looked steady, clear. You look tired, he said. So do you, I answered, smiling. Despite everything for a while, we just sat there listening to the hum of the machines until he said quietly, I remember now. I waited, heart slow, heavy. Remember what? Not all of it, he said, but enough. He gestured weakly toward the notebook resting on the table beside him. That's yours, isn't it? I nodded, unsure where this was going. When I was writing those songs before the crash, I kept seeing a face I couldn't place. Every melody felt like it belonged to someone I hadn't met yet. He paused, eyes soft. And then when I woke up here and saw you, I knew. Knew what? I whispered. That it was you. He said simply, the face in the music, the person my heart kept inventing. I wanted to tell him that sounded like delirium, like a head injury, like wishful thinking. But the words wouldn't come, because his voice was too honest, too familiar, too right. Daniel, I said slowly, you're married to Evan now. He nodded, his expression steady but sad. I know and I love him, but that doesn't make this less real. I looked down at my hands. So what is this then? Maybe unfinished business, he said. Maybe the universe making sure we kept our promise. I felt the air shift between us, something warm and painful. All at once, the kind of ache that belongs to a memory you can't prove. He smiled faintly. You saved me again. Again? I asked. Yeah. He said, eyes closing a little. Just like before by the lake when I fell and you pulled me out, remember? And in that moment, I did not with my mind, but with something deeper. A flash of water, moonlight, the feeling of his hand slipping from mine, then finding it again. My throat tightened. Daniel, don't say it, he murmured. Just know I'll remember this time. His hand found mine, one last time, before sleep claimed him. Not the kind of sleep that fades, but the kind that lets go. The monitors were steady, no alarms, no panic, just quiet acceptance. And when I finally stepped outside, the sky was breaking open pink and gold over Minneapolis, and I swear I heard his voice in the wind saying softly, thank you for keeping your promise too. Do you believe love can find its way back, even through different lives, different people, and different timelines?